Welcome to today's webinar, Feminine Norms, a Key to Improving STEM Outcomes by Ricky Wilchins. My name is Greg Nagy. And I'm the Virtual Learning Community Manager from The Ohio State University, who provides technical support for the STEM Equity Pipeline project. Before we start this presentation, I would like to go over some housekeeping items for this webinar. This webinar is scheduled to last roughly 45 minutes and is being recorded in order to view this presentation in its entirety later. The recorded webinar will be available in the next few days on the stemequitypipeline.org website. As you've already found out, you will be watching the presenter present slides through the Adobe Connect interface while listening to her talk over your computer speakers. All of the participants' microphones have been automatically muted. You can make the presentation larger by clicking the full screen button at the top of your Adobe Connect window. You can also download the slides and other files from the Files pod at the bottom left of your Adobe Connect window. Click on the file you want to download.
Thank you, Greg.
Good
afternoon, and welcome to the National Alliance for Partnerships and Equity and the STEM Equity Pipeline
questions
webinar.
After the presentation. However, we can take questions at any time. This is how we take questions. At any time during the presentation,
NATE funds this webinar through a grant from the National Science Foundation.
At the bottom of the Adobe Connect window.
I'd like to start today by asking how you heard about the webinar. There are a variety of choices here, and some of them ask you to chat. If you'll do that in the chat function, Greg is going to post the poll, and now you can vote. Okay, thank you. Let's end the poll. Oh no, some people are still, I think we're pretty good. We'll end the poll. I can see that most people are still getting it from the pipeline mailing list, but also we're getting some from colleagues again and a few from the website, so thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. We'd like to remind you that all of our webinars are archived at the stemequitypipeline.org website. Also, if you'd like a certificate of completion when you fill out your evaluation survey, there's a section for you to indicate that. I'd also like to remind you that down in the Files section on the left-hand side of your screen, you're going to see two documents. One is the PowerPoint, if you'd like to download that, and also there's a resource document that has the links that are talked about in this webinar presentation. Just hit highlight the ones that you want and then download the files. Remind you that we would like for you to use the chat function to share information or to ask questions, or if you have other documents that are information resources that you can share, that you can type them into the chat function. We will take questions at the end of the presentation. Who's participating today? This will give our presenter an idea of who's on. This is a poll, so you can see the different items that you can choose, and chat if you'd like to tell us which group you're with. Well, it looks like that let's post that, Greg. Looks like we have a pretty good cross-section of people that have joined us today. Those of you that put other, please type in the chat function what organization or agency that you represent. Thank you, Greg. I also would like to know, is there anyone else watching this webinar with you? You can see what the chat function is about, so let's put the poll up and see how many other people are watching with you. Well, it looks like today that we have most people are watching by themselves. Sometimes we have other people that have joined us, so thank you for answering the question. I'd like to start by introducing our speaker again, and we're just so pleased that she will join us and share her research and resources with us. Ricky, you're on.
Well, I just want to thank you, Frida and Freda, and also Gregory and Mimi at NAPE for making this possible, and of course OSU and SF as well. Thank you all for coming today. We're going to talk about what I think is a really interesting subject that hopefully most people will kind of get in their bones, but we don't always talk about, which is the impact of internalized ideas around femininity on girls' STEM interests and achievement. So a little bit about me. I've been doing this for a long time, and I guess the key takeaway on this slide is that I have several books out on gender theory. No, Freda, that is not a picture of my chest right there on the book. And also, if you look on the far right side, you can see in Time magazine, they didn't want to spend any more space on me. So if you look to the far, far right on your monitor, you probably can't see it, but there's a little red bar. It says Others Who Made a Difference. And they have over there right next to me Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King. So I was in good company. So my mom loved that edition. A little bit about today's presentation. This is PowerPoint's based on work we've been doing with Motorola Solutions Foundation, also the Office of Adolescent Health and the Office on Women's Health. We're going to talk about some background for this discussion, get our terms and definitions straight, because terms like gender norms and femininity are always contested and overloaded terms in the English language. We're going to talk specifically about femininity and STEM and what I think are some interesting ideas that we're still learning about. We're going to hit a few common objections that I hear, and then finally talk about what are still some open questions on the area. And someone's doing a lot of typing in the background, I'm not sure, but whoever that is might want to just mute just a little bit. So by way of background, I think that as a field, we've done a great job on looking at external obstacles, chilly classroom climate, masculine pedagogy, lack of role models. You guys probably all know this because you do this. Also interpersonal obstacles like stereotype threat and so forth. We haven't done such a great job of really looking deeply at, you might call, internal obstacles. And primary among them, and of course what we're going to discuss most today, is girls' own belief systems and attitudes about femininity. So we're really doing a good job of clearing away and identifying some of the external things holding girls back. May not be doing a really great job on looking at the internal things that could be holding them back. So one of the reasons that I think this is important to look at, and I've had some people say, well, you know, it's really about just girls are being held back from STEM and their interest is being suppressed. But one of the questions you might want to put in the back of your mind is, if it's not about internal beliefs, if those are not a huge variable that we're overlooking, then why does STEM interest measurably decline right around what's called, and I'll get to this in a moment, that gender intensification period, age 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, where even girls who had good grades and who like STEM in elementary school suddenly start leaking from the leaky pipeline in earnest. What is it that is different at ages 8 to 14? And I think, obviously, one of the things that I would say is it has to do with the gender intensification period of late adolescence and early teens, where interest in traditional norms starts to accelerate among boys and girls, for that matter. I love that book title, Cinderella Ate My Daughter. I have an 8-year-old at home, so that cracks me up. It's about true, the lower right. But interest in traditional norms starts to accelerate, and belief for them starts to solidify. And obviously, learning to be masculine young men and feminine young women is a primary rite of passage, maybe the primary rite of passage for every adolescent. So what is it that shifted suddenly during those years? Were there not a lack of role models or chilly classroom climate and so forth before age 8, 9, 10? So I call this little exercise the 6 degrees of gender. This is about terms and definitions. I kind of make a joke off the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon website because, you know, Kevin's been in so many movies connected to everything. Gender's like that. We connect it to almost everything. And I want to kind of disambiguate a little bit what I mean when I talk about gender norms. So I don't mean sex, which is, you know, primary and secondary physical characteristics, genitals, body hair, muscularity, and so forth. We're not referring to gender identity, which is an important thing. It refers to an inner sense of being male or female, very important when you're dealing with transgender or transsexual individuals who feel a conflict between their inner gender identity and their physical sex. We're also not really talking very much about gender expression, which is how we express feeling masculine or feminine through things like clothing, hairstyle, posture, even vocal inflection. And finally, sexual orientation, which I think is often confused with gender norms. Sexual orientation is romantic or sexual attraction to members of one or more sexes. What I do want to talk about with gender, actually there are two kind of parts to this. Gender equity, which is improving access and opportunities for everyone who's left behind, especially, of course, women and girls. And then finally, gender norms, which are the socially constructed ideals and scripts and expectations that almost all of us start learning from birth about what it means to be a boy or a girl. If you give a crying infant to parents and you say it's a boy, they'll say, oh, he's angry. If you tell them it's a girl, they'll say, oh, she's sad. They will promptly begin to stroke the girl. They'll start to balance the boy. So just really from birth, we start, you know, these gender ideals start going out there and kids start absorbing them really quickly. And if you look at the literature, especially international-facing organizations, they've coined this new term, which is kind of a mouthful, called gender transformative, which refers to approaches to problem solving, not only STEM, but also teen pregnancy and partner violence, girlfriend abuse, approaches that try to hold up and highlight and ultimately challenge rigid gender norms and inequities. So we're going to be talking for the rest of today really about the gender norms part of this and how we can use gender norms to increase gender equity for women and girls when it comes to STEM. And if you look at that diagram, that little graphic in the lower right, if you do this right, if you really go into gender transformative in a deeper way than we have time today, you also look at intersections of race and class. We'll touch a little bit on that today, but you get this nice intersectional model that looks at race, class, and sexual orientation. You kind of get this full package when you do gender transformative approaches in depth. So I want to talk a little bit about what happens when organizations and funders, for that matter, in the U.S. say, we have a gender lens. We give with a gender lens. And this is actually one of the documents I use in trainings. I love grant making with a gender lens. It's excellent. But when you actually look for the phrase gender norms, it doesn't appear anywhere in the 36 pages, nor does the term masculinity or femininity. So when we say we have a gender lens in the U.S., really what we end up talking about is gender equity. This entire other half, the gender norms piece, has been left out. And so I think part of my work at True Child is to just try to rebalance our gender lens a little bit so it includes both pieces. So that's kind of a good segue into gender norms specifically. Let's talk about them. So as I mentioned, gender norms are learned. Yes, that is little Bow Wow kissing his biceps. During adolescence, we talked about this. They are highly regulated. The English language has, a little rough language coming up here, has an extremely elaborate vocabulary for calling out and stigmatizing the least degree of gender nonconformity. So very elaborate vocabulary for regulating gender displays that don't fit. Gender norms take practice. I don't know if you guys follow Boondocks. I like his work. You probably can't read this on some of your monitors, but he's making all these fierce faces, and then his brother peeks in and says, "Are you practicing your thug mug?" And he goes, "Yeah, keeping it real is hard work when you're cursed with cuteness." So he's practicing. And if you watch kids at that certain age, girls start practicing feminine behavior, everything from putting on makeup and practicing how to walk, and guys practice how to stand, and a whole bunch of things start happening. So really a primary rite of passage that kids practice, and by the time they're our age, it kind of seems normal, but you forget back when you actually had to try all that stuff on. A little bit about class here. The impact of gender norms is generally enhanced as many things are in low-income environments where gender codes on the street may be especially narrow, and penalties for transgressing them can be particularly harsh. This is so we kind of get into the specifics about gender norms. I'm going to talk a little bit about masculinity, and then we're going to move away from it. This comes from Byron Hurt, who did a wonderful documentary about misogyny, homophobia, and masculinity in hip hop. And he said, you know, we're in this box, and you got to be strong, you got to be tough, you got to have girls, you got to be a player, you got to dominate other men, and if you're not those things, then people call you soft or weak or a chump. And so everybody stays inside the box. Now, I'll grant you there's some tough language, and it's very non-technical, but that's probably one of the best working definitions of masculinity, traditional masculinity I've ever seen. And if you look at that, it actually has impacts on behavior. And you can flip that on its head and say, well, what about femininity? Well, you know, femininity is primarily composed of what I call the 3 Ds. Girls are supposed to learn to be deferential, dependent, and desirable. And you can see all the Disney princesses I'm trying to wean my daughter off of kind of exemplify those things. And of course, they're supposed to be ultra thin, pretty, and preferably have long straight hair, as all the princesses do. What's missing? Well, a lot of good things like being logical, intellectual, you know, assertive, or independent. So when you look at those feminine norms, and experts have done this, you find that these internalized belief systems, have manifold impacts on actual behavior in a cluster of related areas. And so as girls believe more strongly in traditional feminine norms, they're more likely to leave school early, have earlier unplanned pregnancies, be victimized by partner abuse or partner violence, have high levels of dissatisfaction with their body, more likely to defer to male sexual prerogatives, have low self-esteem, etc., and be anxious or depressed. So there's kind of this real checklist of lower life outcomes that go along with internalizing these really narrow definitions of femininity. You become vulnerable to this, like I said, cluster, so much so that some people are referring to gender norms as a gateway belief system, with the idea that once you kind of walk through the gate, you get this kind of cluster of lower outcomes that you're vulnerable to in a bunch of related areas. When you look specifically at feminine norms in STEM, the research suggests, but I don't want to say, it doesn't document because we're not there yet, but it does suggest that girls face a double bind. They have to choose between opting out of femininity and opting out of STEM. Oh, sorry, wrong picture there. There we go. There's the right picture we want. Okay. And it especially happens right around 8, 9, 10, where the whole tomboy thing goes out the window, and girls really are expected to be more girly. So we actually started doing some focus groups for Motorola Solutions Foundation and asked them about this. And we said, do you have to make a choice between being pretty or smart? Or can you be both? And they all cracked up and they said, yeah, but not in junior high. And so we asked them about that. And they said, well, you can, but then they immediately went on to relate this pretty classmate who has long hair and no one talks to her because she's smart, she's like a nerd. So there's they know the right answer, which is, you can do it, but then they also say you can't do it in junior high, and look what happens to this one girl who's trying to do both. So they kind of know the reality of the pressures they're under. They also told us that the more they got interested in boys, the more there was this subtle pressure to dumb it down. The boys don't dig on girls who want to take apart their laptops and do trig in their heads. And I think, any of us who've had, young girls at home know that that's in fact the case. There's a lot of expectations, and they get stronger as the girls get older. I love that picture in the lower right. So we actually, toward the end of the focus groups, we did 3 of these, mostly with young women of color, presented them with the data. We pulled out a number of studies and said, look, what do you think is going on here? And what they said, they said during that period, that's when girls start giving up on math, that's when they start noticing boys. The boys want you to be pretty. The girls start worrying more about their looks and feel like academics don't count as much. These are not external barriers, and they are not going to be resolved by addressing external barriers. You can give these girls more role models and more opportunities and give them all laptops. These are belief systems and practices that are going on in middle school and that will have to be addressed, I think, if we're going to make more progress with girls in STEM. And I have to say, not only that it's not external. Someone said to me, oh, you're blaming the victim. And I said, these girls are not. They're anything but victims. They are very conscious and very intentional about their disengagement with STEM. And we have to start talking with them about it. So in addition to doing the external barriers, we're hoping the field will start to do more about the internal barriers and practices, because these girls are very conscious and intentional. They've thought about this, but we're not really talking to them about that. So at some point, someone will say, so is it all gender? And I want to say no. I'm not trying to say this gender is the only dog in the fight. Obviously, it's not. I hope I've been in pains to say that. We're not even saying it's the biggest dog in the fight. It's not the biggest variable out there. We are saying it's the biggest dog not in the fight. If you were looking for the next big drop on the meter on programmatic effectiveness, the next big variable that would help your programs be more effective, you would want to look at internalized feminine norms. Clearly, it's the elephant in the room. Now I'm mixing animal metaphors. I've just shifted from dogs to parking meters to elephants, so forgive me on that. But clearly, it's kind of the elephant in the room. It's the big thing that kind of all of us know, but none of us are really addressing. So I think what it's left us with, and you probably can't see this, maybe too small on your monitors, is a bunch of open questions. If you look at the literature, and I love Google Scholar, I did some Google Scholar searches on femininity in STEM, feminine engineering and math. You get thousands of studies that come up, and so you think, well, the researchers have really done their job. But then when you actually look deeper, the studies don't really, first of all, they don't address girls. They tend to address cultural belief systems, often among adults. They hardly ever look at girls, and when they do, it's never applied. It's, we interviewed, 40 college freshmen, and they told us X. So I think if you buy the argument that feminine norms are crucial, there's some really interesting and cutting-edge questions here that we could address. Part of it has to do not only with girls' belief systems, but also what seems to be a key variable is what boys think about girls in STEM, or perhaps more accurately, what girls think boys think about them. Girls form beliefs that boys will not find them attractive, and in fact, sometimes they don't. But they form these ideals and beliefs in their head, and then they act on them. It may be even that down the road, we'll have to not only be addressing girls in STEM, but to get better outcomes for girls in STEM, we'll have to also address the boys around them, which I think is fascinating. It's kind of counterintuitive because you think, God, we're not putting enough money into girls as it is. Why waste it on boys? But it may turn out that what boys believe and communicate to girls is a critical variable here, almost as important as what the girls themselves believe about STEM. So we've put together what I call a mini curriculum with Motorola, and this will be online shortly. We're testing with a couple groups, and they're very simple exercises. They're fun to do. Most of these are in use in the international space, and we've really tried to adapt them to our partnering organizations. SUNY STEM Project is using this, and Project Exploration in Chicago are helping us pilot it. And they're just really simple, easy to learn, easy to teach, fun exercises that there are about 6 of them. They each take about an hour or so to do, so it's not like you're going to have to turn your program on its head. But we hope that anyone could integrate this into their existing STEM programming and hopefully get better results. Our proposition is that you get better results if you talk to girls about the pressures they're under around feminine norms than if you don't. I think that's uncontroversial, but the fact is it remains
Thanks,
very
Ricky.
much an open question.
I can see that some people are beginning to type a question, but I wanted to ask you specifically, I know that you have this curriculum that's coming, and there's some activities that can be used, but how do we address I want to know, even at elementary school or as parents, or besides what we might do in our STEM programs?
I don't know the answer to that, and I have a daughter who's 8 and wants to be a vet, and one of the things that I do to armor her, of course, she's addicted to her iPad, is every week I change her iPad password. I think last week it was antibiotic. She has to not only spell it to get in, she has to tell me what it means. So I'm trying to start early, but I don't think we know. I think ideally we would like to start with these girls as early as 6, 7, 8 and start. You're not going to change kids' minds of anything. I can't change my daughter's mind about what Nickelodeon channel to watch. What I want her to do is I want her to think critically. I want her to think critically and consciously about what she's being told girls have to do. So when the pressure does come, oh, girls don't do science, she's got an answer, she's thought about it. And it may not be the answer that I want her to have, but I at least want to have that conversation. I think it's a great question, Freda. We don't have that answer yet. We're just starting to test what would be effective tools. And I'm hoping to learn in this pilot, if these exercises are effective, and if so, if we can amp them up and make them even more effective. And hopefully after this next round, we've asked Motorola.
Yes, I can see there's some other questions to ask here. Have you contacted Project Lead the Way to partner with them in their STEM curriculum?
It'll be up on our website.
Okay, so that's
if someone
maybe
just
an
wants to see a
idea.
copy of it, I'm happy to send it around. We've actually asked Motorola for a grant to scale this up, and we'll be looking for partnering organizations to do that with in the fall.
Another question, will audience members receive an email about when and where Ricky's curriculum is available?
Thank you for that question, Stephanie.
So when it becomes available, you can let us know, and we can put that on the NAEP and the STEM equity?
I have not. I'm not. I'm sorry. I should know about them, and I don't. So if someone wants to send me a link, I'll be glad to. Check that out. Yeah, I can send you a copy. It's just we've got embargoed on it because we're trying not to spam the universe because it isn't.
Okay, we can do that. So just if you send it to us, we'll get it out to everyone that's on the webinar.
Thoughts and opinions on it while we're trying
the next question is, let's see, I've got to see what the next question is. I'm looking over on the other side of the chat. Just a sec. How can industry contribute to this issue?
Culture that your girls live in. But I would be delighted to share that, and if people just want to let you know, I'll send you a copy, and you can, flush it out to everybody who wants it. How can industry contribute to this issue? That's a really good question. I mean, we would like to see more support for this among corporations. I think there are a lot of corporations doing STEM work, and there are at least a handful that are really specifically interested in girls. I would like to see much more interest. Right now, Motorola, I think, has been our saving grace in terms of their willingness to go out on a limb with this. It certainly was new 3 years ago, and now I think we've kind of established it. But we need more corporations to take a handle on this. And I just want to say, we talk mostly about girls in STEM, but there are also masculinity pressures that
the next question is it effective to use media examples to point out gender stereotypes and opportunities to show where men find smart women attractive? Parentheses, how do you feel about Big Bang Theory making nerdy sexy?
Even for funders and corporate foundations that really feel that this doesn't include boys. It does. The gender norms thing is important to both sides of the equation. So hopefully corporations will realize this is in their interest. I love that kind of stuff. I don't know if it's effective or not.
Well, I think
I
it's
certainly
one of
try to
the
encourage
things that
it
you
with my
said
daughter.
that's most important is that we
certainly hope
teach
that it
all
helps.
children to critically
I think
think
anything
about
we can
what
do
they're
to armor these
exposed to
girls
and what's
up
happening around in their own social
and challenge
circle.
them
And
to think and call out the
okay,
innocent
next
parts,
question.
you
Based
know,
on
are
the
really helpful.
research, what
I think
age
that can
are
be,
girls most likely to be
even when someone tried
impacted
to give my
by
daughter,
the
you know, the science
most by
Barbie,
these
she immediately
social
went
or
to, well,
societal
why is she walking on
influences?
tiptoes? Why is she in
So
pink?
based on
Why are all her,
research, at
you know,
what
it's like,
age?
I want her to
At 8 or
think. So
9?
anything you can do, I think, is helpful. Mhm. It seems to start right around 8 or 9. Yeah, that gender intensification period is really middle school. It starts around 8, but really 9, 10, 11, 12. I mean, it coincides with puberty. There's no mystery
Okay,
there.
this is a
you know,
question that relates
kids,
to the
I mean,
curriculum.
boys want to
Do
be
they
seen as
include
masculine
both
young,
boys
young
and
women
girls,
want
the
their ladies
classroom
to be seen as
exercises that are in the
feminine
curriculum?
and there's a lot of pressure on them to do so. And that seems to be also the time that the leaky pipeline suddenly starts leaking girls in earnest. So that seems to be the critical period. I think trying to intervene when they're 16, 17, or 18, you know, the cake is probably baked. So it's right around that critical period that I hope we can have an impact. No, and I wish they did. Motorola Solutions is very committed to bringing greater equity to girls in STEM, and that was our brief as well. But we would eventually like to have the resources, and frankly, we need program partners. We only work with groups on the ground. I mean, we don't, you know, we're only consultants. We would like to expand it and do the same thing with boys.
Okay,
And not only
the next thing,
pressures on
Jill
masculinity
has
that force
posted a
boys out of
website
STEM,
for you,
but
which
the
is
pressures around the
Project Lead the Way,
expectations
and it
that
has
boys
some
have
great
that
courses
girls
and
who do
curriculum,
STEM aren't
and
cute
it
and
might
aren't
be interesting
attractive.
to look at the
Because I think
courses and
that will have
curriculums
a
and
big
just
impact
review
on the
them
girls. So
from
there's
this point of
a whole
view
bunch of really cool, interesting questions
about
here
internal
for us to
barriers.
explore that are really new.
Next question,
I mean, you guys are
is the
asking me
curriculum being
quality.
piloted strictly with
That I think is
girls? I
the
ask
next
because
place to
Ricky
go, is
commented on the
looking
need
for
to educate young
participation.
male as well. If not, you're aware of
Good
any
question.
initiatives to include all genders? And you have answered that question, but do you know of any initiatives? Okay, the next question says, do you think single gender programs are more effective than combined gender?
No, and we're just starting with girls around this. The whole thing around feminine norms, as I said, really has not been explored in the STEM space.
I will
Even though
speak
I
up
think we
and
kind of
say
all get it,
one
it's
thing is
still
that NAEP does
new
have
turf.
a stand
So we're all kind
about
of we're going to learn
single
some interesting
gender
things together,
programs in school curriculum, and believes that that is not the best way from the research that they have looked at to you know, promote
Janice,
STEM
I'm not going to
with
step foot in
our
that.
success
Still
in
having
STEM
with my partner.
areas
She wants our
or
daughter
in
in the single
higher
gender program. I'm
curriculum
not
math and
convinced.
science
I
classes,
don't really
but to
know
have
the
both
answer.
genders and to
I
use
think the jury is still
teaching
out.
techniques or teaching strategies that are effective for, you know, for all students. Okay, thank you. I do think that there are a lot of people typing now, and I know that, though I don't, that NAEP also supports specific programs that are summer programs or after-school programs that are single-sex. Let's see, it says,
stand by the NAEP
let's
position. Even
see,
if I disagree
do
with
you have a
I
link
am
to that
totally
research?
behind
I
that
will try to
position.
find it because I don't have it on hand right now,
I'm
Janice. So
I'm a chicken when
I
it
see
comes
that
to
other
that
people
question.
are
I'll still
typing, and I'll just
strike
have
it
to
out.
wait till
I
they're
don't
through
know.
typing to ask you the next question, Ricky. Okay, next question. Has any of your research been done with representatives from various cultural backgrounds? Well, and I did notice that when you were speaking that you talked about or gave some information about that the socioeconomic status makes a difference on sometimes how much impact that these barriers, that the societal barriers have upon young people.
It hasn't scaled up. It's no bigger than SUNY and Project Exploration in Chicago. So we're going to learn from these two groups. So it's still very small.
This is from Wendy. I wanted to share that I went to an all-girls high school and we did not face the kind of problems highlighted in the talk. I'm sure it differs by city too.
Yeah, it's interesting. Other cultures,
next question, not a question but a thought. Children who are questioning their gender identity or don't fall into rigid gender roles may struggle in the same gender classes. It adds to their stressors. Next comment. I work in youth development with individuals ages 10 through 24. In regards to programming with females age 14 plus, are there different or specific approaches we should take with them, seeing as though they have passed the 8 to 10-year-old milestones? Parentheses, assuming that these girls have not had much previous experience in STEM.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
Now, well, and I was thinking that Jamie's comment and question might be good to have on the blog, to have maybe some input from some people who are running programs that are at an older age, and they might have some results that they could share with us. The next question, this is from Susan. Is there an issue in other countries? And you did indicate about Japan, so do you want to make any more comment about that? Are there any other countries that you know about?
Obviously. Well, there was a recent article that came out that, U.S. girls score worse.
Okay, next question. There are many suggestions on how to work with girls in AAUW's research report, Why So Few? Women in STEM that came out in 2010, and I would agree that that is a good resource.
It certainly isn't innate, otherwise it would be the same from culture to culture. So clearly, cultural beliefs.
Let's see, I see that someone is typing.
The question is kind of, can we come up with
so wait till their
curriculum that
comment comes in.
honor those? Yeah, we've done some great work with the AAUW.
Okay, Anna says, we would probably be interested in working with you more, Ricky. I eagerly await the results of your work. And this person is from AAUW, so maybe you two can make contact. Anna?
Frankly, I was actually on their panel when they launched that, and I did talk about it, but it wasn't something that got picked up by a lot of my co-presenters. So I'd like to hear more about that from some of the leading lights in the field.
And Anna, I'm sure you maybe have the contact for Ricky, but for everyone else, just know that in the file section on the left where it says NAEP webinar resource document, you have the links to be able to, and the email address to be able to contact Ricky.
We actually mentioned her in one of our reports. Tell her I look forward to working with her.
So, do we have any more questions coming in?
We actually worked on the reissue of Hostile Hallways.
I don't see anyone else typing.
Love your work. Thank you for being on the call today. Absolutely. Well, these have been some really good ones. These have been great. And I just want to say, for those of you who are on the call, I want to shine some sunlight on Freda and Gregory, because we had to go through a lot of, I actually ended up doing this not from my desk in office in DC, but from someone else's office.
Ricky is saying that the NAEP file includes the True Child's website, but not your address, so I must not have put it in there. Can they email you directly with you?
Thank them again for hanging in there and making this webinar possible. And also our sponsors, Motorola Solutions Foundation. It's been a blast, and I hope we can come back and do this again.
Okay, and I wanted to ask you another question. There were a lot of good questions that were brought up. Are you willing to, if I put the blog back up, could we put some of those questions in there and see if people will answer and talk about it?
I'm putting it in now. I even spelled it right.
So I'm asking everybody who is on right now, are you aware that we ran a blog on the NAEP website, and we would like to continue that maybe next week or the rest of this week? And would you just let me know by typing, would you be willing to get on the blog and share information or ask questions?
I mean, not just my answers. I think I kind of know what I think.
I've got some people typing now.
People who attended and can hear a discussion among
yes, I will. Yes. Okay. That's what we wanted to hear. Okay, so Greg will get that going, get the blog going again. We'll work with Nancy and get that up and see if we can't continue some of the discussion from today. Thanks, Ricky, and I'm going to continue with our part of the webinar. Thank you so much, and thanks to NAEP and to the National Science Foundation. I would encourage everyone to join and view the virtual learning community and the archive webinars. I think I want to listen to this one again. It's at the STEMequitypipeline.org.
Thank you again.
Thanks for participating in the webinar, and we look forward to you participating in future webinars. I do want to share with you that we're going to run a book club in June. Anyway, we're going to have 3 different times we'll have a discussion group, and so be looking for the, I'll probably put that out in the next week or so, the advertisement or blast for that. Please complete the certificate of completion, which is page 2 of the evaluation survey, and know that the evaluation survey is not connected to the part you complete for the certificate of completion, so that both are separate, but they're one together when you respond, but only our evaluator looks at them. And Greg, are you ready to post? When will the recording be up? I see another question. Usually, Greg, when is the recording going to be up of the webinar? Okay. And then you have the evaluation survey that you can put up. Greg's going to post it, and he also will be putting it down into the chat function. So, Greg, do you want to tell him what happens with this?
Usually tomorrow. Sometimes it takes longer, but tomorrow, if it all works well. Yes, Freda. So I also
No,
just
I
run
think it's been a great webinar, and I
just
appreciate everyone
for
being
this
on.
live and archive
And
webinar.
fill out
I
your
just put up a short survey.
survey,
It should
please,
open in another
and
tab in
let
your
us know how
browser.
things went, and then look
Please
for
complete
the
this for us now.
blog on the
I'll
NAEP
also send you an
website.
email with the link to the
Thank you.
survey in case you don't have time to fill it out now. And for the archive webinar, for some folks, please refer back to your registration email with the link to the survey. So thank you. Anything else, Freda?